I'm looking at.
The plots which are identified as Alaji Mari Jagana,
Yeah.
Gambia Scout Association, Nigeria High Commissioner,
Yeah.
Alaji Mari Jagana.
Yeah.
Again, two
Okay.
plots. Those plots were not part of the Fajara M section layout. Is that not correct?
They are part of it because they are on the same alignment.
Say that again.
They are in the same alignment in the layout.
I am putting it to you that they were not part of the Fajara M section layout, yet they were allocated to investors at the time.
Unless I see the layout plan, I cannot confirm that.
So you are just speaking on top of your head. You don't really have,
No, I'm assuming based on the alignment of the layout.
you are just assuming.
Yeah.
But there's no documentation before you to show us that it was actually not part of the Fajara M section.
Yeah, that's why I said, unless I see the plan that says otherwise.
Mr. Sise,
Yes.
I am putting it to you that you are just speaking on top of your head. You have no documentation to prove that this was part of the Fajara M section layout.
I'll insist that I'll still say that it's part of the, unless I see a map, a layout plan of Fajara M sections that shows otherwise.
Very well. Let us move on. I am also putting it to you that it is not unusual for government to de-reserve areas and allocate to businesses that are able to invest.
That's true.
Mr. Chairman, I'm a little confused. I believe Council recalled this witness as her witness. I do not believe she can cross-examine the witness and put the evidence to him.
Of course I can.
Yes, I was just wondering.
I'm sorry.
Because, hold it, because I looked at the list, and against Director of Lands, I see witness recall by M.A. Samba. So it would appear that this witness is your witness, who has been cross-examined by, who has been examined by you, cross-examined by counsel to the commission, and now being re-examined by counsel M.A. Samba. If I'm wrong at this stage, you can say so. But,
yes.
But it appears that is the case, that you are in fact in a position where you are re-examining this witness.
Yes.
Well, in that case, I'm sure you are well aware that in re-examination, you cannot cross-examine.
I'm not
we all know the rules.
I'm not cross-examining the witness. I'm trying to get the witness to clarify certain issues that he has raised about the position of the plot.
Very well, I'll let that go, but
yes,
we will listen to the next question.
Very well. Mr. Sise.
And you'll be careful, of course, not to go beyond clarifying a point.
I do appreciate the chairman's point, but I believe that this is a commission of inquiry, and I'm sure that the chair is very much interested in having the facts that are on the ground, and that is the reason why I'm pursuing the questioning of the witness. The witness has not come up with any document for the statements that he has made, and that is why I'm asking him further questions. Thank you.
Well, if he hasn't come with
Mr. Sise,
hold it.
it is correct that...
Hold it. I say if the witness has not come with documents, we know the conclusion to reach at the end of the day.
I know that.
But that definitely does not permit you to do what looks like cross-examination, even in this commission of inquiry.
Very well. As the commissioner pleases, the chair pleases. Mr. Sise, it is correct that the government of the Gambia has been allocating land along this piece of land from Palmarima Junction coming down to Kairaba Avenue along the Batil Harding Highway.
Yeah, that's true. The government did allocations there.
and investors have been developing.
Yes.
And it is aligned to this building.
Yes.
Thank you. That's all for the witness.
Thank you. Thank you. You may go now, Mr. Sise.
Sorry? There's a witness, Ansovana Jami. Ah, okay.
I don't even know. I found it later.
Counsel, do you want to call any other witness?
No, Mr. Chairman. I think the next matter is for my learned friend, Mr. Tambedu, to address. I think the list was revised.
I see. Keba Drame is no longer being called.
No, we are deferring his evidence. He was supposed to tender some files, but
okay.
The files have not been photocopied.
Very well.
Honorable Chairperson, I beg leave of the Commission to go.
Very well, leave is granted.
Thank you.
Thank you. Being together. Very well. Very well. It's, we say we are getting at 4:30. We are quite prepared to hear Mr. Tambedu. He will tell us on whose behalf he is addressing us. However, it will be made clear that the address must end at 4:30. But if it does not end, we'll have to adjourn. That's the only condition.
I'm grateful to Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. I believe my address will go up to 4:30. I in fact tried to reduce my proposed address into writing, so much so that...
Sorry, but first of all, whom are you representing today?
I intend to make addresses of clients. On behalf, firstly, on behalf of Mr. Tony Ratas, and Mr. Tariq Musa of the Export.
Yes. Thank you. We've got you down. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, members of the Commission. Mr. Chairman, before I start the address, I wish to extend my most sincere gratitude to the Commission. I understand that addresses were scheduled, and it is only because I have difficulty in meeting those dates that the Commission has agreed to reschedule for me to address. I thank the Commission. I also thank my learned friend, Counsel for the Commission, Mrs. Bensouda. She has cooperated really very well with me in order to be able to do this task on behalf of my clients. I thank Mrs. Bensouda for her cooperation. May it please Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission, Mr. Tony Gatas was summoned as a witness before the Commission in August 2017. Now, this Commission will confirm that he has cooperated to the fullest on matters on which he was summoned for. He has attended every time that he was required to and has produced every document that he was ordered or required to produce. He has also complied with all orders of the Commission insofar as it concerned or related to him and the Alhamdulillah Petroleum and Mineral Company Limited, APAM. I wish to also state, Mr. Chairman, that for the record, that despite several requests made for copies of the transcript evidence of Mr. Gatas, it was not made available to him or to me. I had submitted this request to the previous secretary. So in my address, I will be referring to evidence as recorded by myself during the proceedings, but I believe this evidence will be the correct ones. Now, I wish to address this Commission on two issues, Mr. Chairman. Firstly, whether Mr. Tony Gatas is a close associate of former President Jammeh. And secondly, what is his role in APAM? Now, the illustrated Oxford Dictionary defines associate, Mr. Chairman, as joined in function or dignity, to join or combine, make oneself a partner, combine for a common purpose, or business partner or colleague, or friend or companion. At the beginning of the Commission hearings, Mr. Chairman did announce that it was the right of every person summoned before the Commission to engage counsel to represent him or her. This is also because Section 14 of the Commission of Inquiry Act, Cap 30, Volume 5 of the Laws of the Gambia states that a person concerned in an inquiry is entitled to be represented by counsel or by leave of the Commission. This is why, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Gatas was very disappointed when in August 2017, Mr. Chairman said, the reason why you, Mr. Gatas, chose to be accompanied by counsel is because you consider yourself a close associate of former President Jammeh. As a matter of fact, it is my submission that Mr. Gatas was not, or is not a close associate of President Jammeh. This is despite a notice dated 7th March 2018 from the Commission, published in the local press, stating that Mr. Gatas was named as a close associate of ex-President Jammeh. Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, there is no evidence from any witness except Mr. Nuha Toure, former Secretary General, who named Mr. Gattaz as an associate of the former president. And this was in answer to a question by counsel, Mrs. Bensouda, as to who the close associates of the former president were. And I must say, this was at a time when Mr. Gattaz was in the limelight of the commission. The unchallenged evidence from Mr. Gattaz is that he has never met President Jammeh other than in public. And I dare say that no other witness before this commission has stated the contrary, or no document has been produced or tendered before this commission to suggest that Mr. Gattaz met the former President Jammeh. If a broad and general interpretation of the word associate is to be given, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, then a lot of people will fall into the category of associates of the former president. His party members, members of his cabinet, doctors and lawyers who acted for him in the acquisition of so many properties may be given that title, or may be described as such. But this is not the case, Mr. Chairman. Now the question is, who is Mr. Gattaz? As he stated in his evidence, Mr. Gattaz is of a Lebanese origin, a businessman who came to the Gambia on holidays, fell in love with the Gambia, and returned to engage in business. This is not unusual in the world. We know many Gambians travel abroad, particularly my tribesmen, to Sierra Leone, to Angola, to Zaire, to Conakry, Guinea, to work in the mining trade. And it is the right of everybody to come to Gambia to engage in legitimate business. Now the evidence
Sorry. You say you are tribesmen.
Yes, the Sarahule.
Yeah, well, you tell us. We don't assume anything in this commission.
Indeed, my...
Your tribesmen, Sarahules.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Well. Thank you for that correction. I thought I did say it, but I guess in my rush to meet your time, I'm trying to... But thank you. The evidence for Mr. Gattaz is that he was involved in transportation business, doing business with Maersk, who had a contract with Carnegie Minerals. He was subsequently introduced by Maersk to Carnegie Minerals and started working with them. When Carnegie left, they were represented by Gamico, and because of his experience with Carnegie, Gamico engaged Mr. Gattaz as a supervisor working on commission. He was not involved in negotiations leading to the grant or the grant of the license in itself. He developed a very good relationship with the Chinese who were working with Carnegie, and he convinced them to come back to the Gambia to come and work with Gamico. Now the evidence also showed that when Gamico left, Mr. Gattaz went to Dakar and only returned back to mining in Gambia when he was called on the telephone by one Nuha Toure, who informed him that he was now appointed as the managing director of APAM. He came and accepted the appointment and met General Saul Baji, who confirmed his appointment and from whom he received all his communication, directives, and instructions concerning or relating to APAM. Now, who is APAM? Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, there is no evidence on the registration and incorporation of APAM before this Commission. We have had APAM being mentioned from various witnesses, notably officers of the Geology Department and its correspondents from the Geology Department. There is also evidence that there was a license between the government of the Gambia and APAM in 2015, August. Now, page 45 of that license shows that it was signed by former President Yahya Jammeh as minister responsible for the administration of Mines and Quarries Act of 2005, and also signed by one Ansumana Jammeh as managing director of APAM. Now, there's also evidence before this commission that Ansumana Jammeh was a brother to former President Yahya Jammeh. So it is very, very clear that from the onset, former President Yahya Jammeh was involved in a scheme to defraud the Gambia and her people by conniving with his brother to give mining license to a company that does not exist under the laws of the Gambia or at all. APAM was not incorporated, neither was it registered. But President Jammeh gave license to APAM with his younger brother, Ansumana Jammeh, as managing director of APAM. Now this is simple because Yahya Jammeh was the highest authority in the land. And this is only possible because it is a notorious fact that he was feared and that he was a dictator. Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, there is evidence you have heard of several accounts opened, bank accounts opened by APAM in the several banks without complying with due procedure or providing all the relevant documents required by those banks for accounts to be opened. Government officials from the geology dealt with APAM like it was a legal entity without questioning the legitimacy of doing so. They were dealing with a company that did not exist here. Now, I do not want to blame or find excuse for any of those banks or government officials, but I am sure what operated in their minds foremost was the fact that Yahya Jammeh was involved and the one behind it. Everybody toed the line because of fear. It is now easy to question individuals who implemented his directives and instructions or why they did not refuse or run away or act to the contrary. With all due respect, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, it is only a fool, I believe, who would have dared risk his life not to do so. While some may have taken advantage and profit themselves, the vast majority had no choice. It is my submission, Mr. Chairman, therefore, that in my humble submission, the buck starts and ends with former President Yahya Jammeh. He alone should account for all and any losses suffered by the Gambia and her people as far as it relates or concerns to the dealings of APAM. Mr. Tony Gattas, my client, is a businessman who was engaged to provide a service for a private enterprise called APAM, albeit that it did not exist. He had legitimate businesses in the Gambia, and the evidence showed that he complied with all the laws, paid his tax, he provided annual returns, audited accounts, renewed his businesses. Is he to get the blame because he, as managing director of APAM, he gave contracts to his various businesses? It is my submission that he should not. Who would not? It is only a question of ethics or morality that as managing director of one company, I would give businesses to my other companies. But there is no law that forbids that. Now, he stated in evidence that all those works, those contracts, and those services, he did consult prior General Baji, who was his point of reference. There is no other evidence before this commission to suggest otherwise. It is my submission that Mr. Tony Gattas is not answerable to the Gambia for doing work for APAM. He did not deal with state monies. Yahya Jammeh created APAM, engaged the resources of the Gambia, and should be responsible entirely for whatever losses the Gambia and her people may have suffered. And I invite this commission respectfully to find and to hold so. And finally, to absolve Mr. Tony Gattas of any wrong or culpability. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, this is what I wish to say as far as it relates to Mr. Gattas. I believe I can continue to make my address on behalf of TK Motors.
Yes, certainly. There is plenty of time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, TK Motors was invited to come and shed some light in relation to their business dealings, particularly the supply of motor vehicles and spare parts to the office of the President on the directives of ex-President Yahya Jammeh without adherence to any public procurement rules, and also that substantial sums of monies have been paid from government accounts at the central bank and other public resources on the executive directives of the ex-president. This is what was contained in the notice that was published in the local press on the 7th June. First of all, I wish to say that from the various documents presented and tendered on behalf of TK Motors, there is evidence that TK Motors was registered with the GPPA, that is the Gambia Public Procurement Agency, and was issued with relevant certificate since the authority was established in 2002. Evidence of tax payments to GRA, together with the company's audited documents, company audited accounts were also presented here. Mr. Chairman, I submit that there is no requirement in the GPPA Act or any other law in the Gambia which requires TK Motors to comply with anything to sell products, goods, or motor vehicles in particular, or to government, except to be eligible. And to be eligible under the Act provided for by Section 25, you have to register. Period. That is all they have to do. It behoves the government or government departments or other institutions that wish to procure vehicles from TK Motors to ensure that they have complied with the requirements of the Act. Now, assuming, and I am not conceding, that TK Motors supplied motor vehicles and spare parts on the directive or executive directive of ex-President Jammeh, the question then is, what is TK Motors culpable of? If they supply and sold vehicles on the executive directives of former President Jammeh, what is wrong with that, as far as TK Motors is concerned? What offense or crime has it committed by selling those vehicles or supplying those spare parts? TK Motors is in the business of selling vehicles, just like different business entities are engaged in the sale of goods and services. And Mr. Chairman, I would like to give the Commission an example. It's just an example. If, for example, it is the case that former President Jammeh preferred Coca-Cola to all other drinks, is it reasonable to expect that Coca-Cola will not sell or supply drinks to President Jammeh if he issues directives or requests for sale? Of course not. Why? Because Coca-Cola is a commercial entity who are engaged in the sale of drinks for profit. And if President Jammeh was their biggest benefactor, their good fortune. It was for President Jammeh or his office to ensure that in buying drinks from Coca-Cola, they have complied with laid down procedures established by the Act or by any other law. All that Coca-Cola perhaps needs to do is to make sure that the drinks are of merchantable quality or fit for their purpose. In the case of TK Motors, I submit that vehicles and spare parts were supplied to the government on the request of the government, but through the Ministry of Finance and the Office of the President. Now, TK Motors have brought and tendered a summary account of all yearly sales of vehicles. The evidence is available before the Commission, including monthly analysis from 2009 to 2017, including supporting documents of the various sales and supplies, invoices of vehicles supplied, delivery notes, acknowledgement of payments, and this all, Mr. Chairman, show a pattern. From 2007 to 2013, every request to supply vehicles to the government, to TK Motors, came through the Ministry of Finance, and they were always signed by the Permanent Secretary. It is there in the evidence. These requests, interestingly, members of the commission, or Mr. Chairman, usually direct TK Motors to supply those vehicles on credit. There were requests to supply to to every minister, permanent secretaries in the government, and to many other offices, like the offices of the president, the vice president, the armed forces, the GRA, the chief of protocol, judges of the high court, Gambia police force, Gambian embassies in Dakar, Bissau, and Nouakchott, office of the ombudsman, National Audit Office, University of the Gambia, Speaker of the National Assembly, Director of Lands and Physical Planning, and even GRTS. The list goes on. So those vehicles, even though the request emanated from Ministry of Finance and the President's Office, directed where they were to go. Now, if TK Motors supplied vehicles at the request of the government, naturally, it expects to be paid. The evidence, as tendered by the document, showed that TK Motors was following and chasing the government all the time for payment. In 2013, the accounts show that government owed TK Motors about $30 million. In fact, in one instance, Mr. Chairman, the debt was $39,887,500, which prompted the government to write a request signed by the former Secretary General, Mr. Sabali, requesting for TK Motors to allow the government to pay the debt by installments of $2.8 million per month. This was on the 10th of February 2014. Now, in a response dated 12 February 2014, TK Motors wrote back to government pleading for government to pay the money it owed it in full because its credit line with its local banks was frozen. Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission, as of December 2016, the Gambia government owed TK Motors $69 million. Now, tell me if TK Motors did not have a legitimate claim to be paid, or if paid, should not have received those monies. TK Motors are not manufacturers of motor vehicles, Mr. Chairman. They procure and buy them from Mitsubishi in Japan, with support from their banks here, notably Standard Chartered Bank, and pay interest. It would have been a different thing altogether if they received payments for vehicles that they did not supply, vehicles at all. But payments were made in staggered fashion in arrears. Obviously, if the request to supply vehicles came from the government, naturally, payment will come from the government accounts in central bank. So the question of TK Motors receiving sums of money from various accounts from government is normal, because government should pay TK Motors, and the bankers of government is the central bank. With all due respect, it is not the business of TK Motors to find out where the monies come from. They supply vehicles, they have a right to be paid. And if they are paid for monies lawfully owed to them, they should accept them. Now, from 2013, the evidence showed that all requests to supply vehicles came from Office of the President, only from 2013. Now, if you examine those documents, you will realize that they were not executive directives. They were identical and similar in form and content to the ones that emanated previously from 2007 to 2013 from the Ministry of Finance. The only difference was the personnel that was signing. In finance, it was the permanent secretary. In the Office of the President, it was the Secretary General, or for the Secretary General, with one exception. From 2013 to 2016, only at one time did the request come from I believe it was the chief of protocol. There is no evidence that the former President Jammeh signed any request for supply of vehicles from TK Motors. Mr. Chairman, you'll be amazed to know that from 2009 to 2016, TK Motors sold and supplied a total of 368 vehicles to the Gambia government. Now, of those 368 vehicles, only 117 were supplied based on requests from the Office of the President. The rest, or 251, about 68% of the vehicles was done through the Ministry of Finance. Mr. Chairman, I invite the chairman, your chairman, to take judicial notice of this fact. It is a notorious fact that there are other companies in the Gambia who dealt with, sold, and supplied vehicles to the government. My client really is perplexed as to why it was selected amongst the lot to appear before this commission. But maybe it is because it is the biggest and leading supplier of vehicles in the country, and naturally its volume of business will be bigger. I say this not because we want to point a finger at any other vehicles dealer, but I say this because a comparison with other vehicle dealers would have shown that the pattern with TK Motors is the same with everybody else. This is how the government of the Gambia get vehicles. Request for supply, request for quotation, Office of the Ministry of Finance, and Office of the President. I have said it earlier in my address, and I will repeat this for emphasis only. It is not the business, with all due respect, not the business of TK Motors to find out where the government gets its money to pay for vehicle supply. What is important is that they were paid for legitimate business. The cost of four-wheel utility and luxury vehicles are very expensive. So naturally, if you order a lot of vehicles, the payment you have to be made will be huge. Finally, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, I'm sorry if I seem to be boring you. I urge this commission to hold that TK Motors did not supply vehicles on the executive directives of former President Jammeh. It was not paid monies on the executive or any other directives of former President Jammeh. I invite this commission to find and hold that TK Motors dealt with the government of the Gambia only, firstly through Ministry of Finance, and then through the Office of the President, which is a government department or office. And that in its dealing with government, everything was lawful and legitimate. TK Motors has provided all its annual returns, audited accounts, business renewals, which all go to show that they were complying with the business laws of the Gambia since TK Motors was incorporated in 1989. I urge the chairman and members of the commission to so hold. Mr. Chairman, I now come to my last address. Naturally, if we talk about TK Motors, I must talk about Tariq Musa. Mr. Tariq Musa is the majority shareholder of TK Motors and TK Export, and I'll be brief with him. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Tariq Musa was summoned as a witness before the commission. Unfortunately, for health reasons, he did not appear. However, he did make statements on the invitation of the investigators on the 30th of November 2017, and he was also sent questionnaire by this commission, which he filled and returned. He also produced several documents that were requested for him to do. I believe, Mr. Chairman, that it was on the 7th of June 2018 that this commission made an interim order, inter alia, restraining Mr. Musa against certain dealings. The wording of the order, I quote, was, Mr. Tariq Musa of TK Motors Gambia Limited and TK Export introduced Muhammad Bazi, close associate to ex-President Jammeh, TK Export has been shown to have been responsible for the purchase of election paraphernalia for the APRC political party of the ex-president, and also received funds from the office of the former First Lady Zainab Jammeh for supplies to that office. Mobicel Blue Ocean Wireless Company Limited contracted over $3 million to TK Export for farming equipment to the former ex-president Jammeh. This is the reasoning I believe that Tariq Musa was included in the order and invited to this commission. Now let me say this first, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, and I say this carefully. I submit that there has been no evidence before this commission, oral, documentary, or otherwise, from any witness that established the fact as contained in the order of this commission that it was Tariq Musa who introduced Muhammad Bazi to former President Jammeh. That evidence does not exist in this commission. With all due respect, I challenge this commission that that evidence does not exist. There is no witness who testified here, neither Mr. Bazi, nor Mr. Fadi, nor from statements obtained from Mr. Musa or any other witness or any other documented evidence that states that Mr. Musa introduced Mr. Bazi to former President Jammeh. It does not exist. Now, what Mr. Musa said.
Sorry, I don't know. Did the commission state anywhere that this introduction was made?
Yes, in its order of the 7th of June,
yes,
in the interim order published in the newspapers, which restrained Mr. Musa from dealing with certain matters. It is stated there.
Yes, we'll take note.
Yes, sir.
7.
Yes.
Sorry, what date?
Yes. 7 June. Yes, sir.
7 June.
Yes, sir. 2018. And I say this with the utmost respect, sir. Utmost respect. It does not exist.
No, it's all right.
Yes, sir.
We are just taking notes.
Yes, sir.
Of what you are saying.
Yes, sir.
Very well. You may go on.
Yes. In his statement to the investigators, Mr. Musa said, and I quote him, "I met Mr. Bazi in Lebanon in 2000 and invited him to the Gambia to look at business opportunities. He came and has been doing his own business." That is all Mr. Musa said in his statement to the investigators. Now, coming to the issue of Mr. Musa having supplied election materials to the APRC for the election. Now, my question is, what is the offense or what is wrong with that? Mr. Musa is a businessman, contracted to supply those materials, and he did. Was he supposed to turn down the business opportunity, an opportunity to make business and profit? Certainly, the APRC does not belong to ex-President Jammeh. And even if it did, what is the wrong in the APRC contracting Mr. Musa to supply election materials? Other parties in this jurisdiction printed T-shirts, caps, and election materials. Certainly, this commission is not attributing wrong to suppliers of those materials. If the barber, the person who cuts the hair of former President Jammeh, was shown to this commission as somebody who did it consistently for payment, would he have been doing wrong for cutting his hair? No. Professing a trade to be paid for that. There's nothing wrong with that. The volume of the business is different. The level of the business is different. Likewise, the supply of other goods and services to the office of the former First Lady, Zainab Jammeh, it was simply a business transaction that Mr. Musa conducted. He has provided documents to this commission of the supply of farming equipment to the former president, and this had to be paid. Just like the memorabilia that former President Jammeh ordered in celebration of July 22nd celebrations, anniversary, gold coins. The evidence is available before this commission. There is correspondence between Office of the President and his staff and Office of Mr. Musa in Dubai and his staff, even minutes by the former president talking about what he wants and what he does not want. And invoices supplied and paid for. Simple.
Hello, sorry. Can you Are those exhibited?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Do you know the exhibit number?
Yes, unfortunately, I do not, but
It's all right.
Yes.
It's all right. You may
yes, these documents were supplied to the Commission on request to Mr. Musa, and they were sent here with a letter. Now, Mr. Musa is definitely not a close associate of former President Jammeh. Mr. Musa, Mr. Chairman, in his statement, he stated in 2004, he was arrested, detained, and deported out of the Gambia by none other than former President Jammeh. Because he has business interests in the Gambia, he lobbied to come back, and he returned here in 2006. Who is Mr. Musa to refuse a business transaction from former President Jammeh with his experience?
Stop.
Yes, sir.
You say Tariq Musa was definitely not a close associate of ex-President Jammeh.
Yes, sir.
Can you give us your definition of close associate, quote unquote?
Yes. Perhaps Mr. Chairman may have missed it, but when I started my address, I did refer to the Oxford Dictionary meaning of the word associate, and I will go back to it. It says the Oxford Dictionary defines associate as 1, joined in function or dignity. 2, join or combine. 3, make oneself a partner. 3, combine for a common purpose. 4 or 5, business partner or colleague. 6, friend or companion. And it is my submission that Mr. Tariq Musa does not fit any of these profiles or these definitions. Now, I will just say this to the Commission. This may be the only opportunity I have to say this. Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, Mr. Musa is the youngest of 5 brothers who all live in the Gambia and have their different works and business in the Gambia.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, that is not a matter in evidence. That is not a matter in evidence.
Evidence.
That's my objection to that statement.
As it pleases the Commission. Mr. Chairman, I believe that this is a commission of inquiry. This commission is not regulated by any procedure or rule of law other than what is deemed proper by Mr. Chairman and your commission members. And if Mr. Chairman and your commission members deems any fact or any matter which will come to your aid in arriving at a just conclusion in respect of any matter, I submit that Mr. Chairman should allow it. I agree. There's no evidence of these facts that I was stating. But these are facts I believe will come to show how the chairman and the members of the committee would regard a particular personnel who is here. We are dealing with issues of the Gambia's financial matters. So the interest of the people who appear before this commission and their value, I believe, and love of the Gambia comes to play as to whether they would intentionally or deliberately misappropriate or lead the Gambia into financial detriment. But I agree with counsel. If the chairman does not allow me, I will not go into that domain. But I just thought it would help the commission.
Well, it is not allowed.
Thank you. That was a very short ruling, Mr. Chairman.
I wish we had all the time in the world. Then you would have had a longer ruling, you know.
Pardon?
It's all right. The ruling is, it is not allowed.
No, I agree. I have heard. Well, in that case, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, this is what I also intend to say in respect of Mr. Tariq Musa of TK Export. I urge the commission to find and hold that his business dealings with the APRC, with the office of former President Jammeh, with the office of the former First Lady, and nothing other than business in normal business. The only difference is it was with a president. That's all, as it pleases the commission. Excuse me.
Is that all?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
We thank you very much
Yes, sir.
for the summary you have given. And what time is it now?
5 minutes.
Oh, yes. Okay. As I said, we have now only 7 minutes. So I'll ask counsel whether she can start her address. If not, we'll have to take another day.
Oh, as it pleases the chairman, I thought I was the only one addressing.
Sorry?
I said I thought I was the only one addressing.
You can have only one.
He thought he was the only one addressing.
You are
Addressing?
here
Sorry. Sorry. It has always been the rule here that at the end of the day there will be addresses. But addresses will not be limited, of course, to counsel on the other side.
Yes.
That would be patently unfair. So it depends on
Mr. Chairman.
Counsel Bensouda.
Yes, I certainly would like to be able to respond on issues particularly touching on the law or any, in my view, with respect to any misrepresentation of facts, as in my view, not on the facts themselves, but on the law and any facts that I, in my own understanding of the evidence that has been led, or appreciation of the evidence that has been led, is not properly represented. However, I'm wondering whether I should respond to each individual counsel, or I should just do a general summation. The disadvantage for Mr. Tambedu, of course, would be that he may not be present when I do a general summation.
Well,
I'll be guided by the chairman.
if I may say so, you have the choice, really. If you want to address individually, no problem. If you want to make a collective address at the end of the day, it's not a problem for the commission at all. We leave it in your discretion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll advise myself and communicate with Learned Counsel since the time is up.
The reason why I asked, is this.
I'm sorry to extend my congratulations to the member of the commission who performed Hajj this year.
Very well, we'll rise tomorrow at 10 o'clock.
Extra Bonanza.
Extra Bonanza.
20 major winners every 20th from February to July. Chromium 2020. Recharge $100 credit or more to be one of the 20 lucky winners. Every month, 20 winners.
15 winners will get rice, sugar, and cooking oil. There will also be a winner for a refrigerator, win flat screen TV, win a generator, win a motorbike, or an iPhone 6.
Chromium Extra Bonanza. Draw starts 20th of every month. Live on GRTS and Paradise FM. Chromium 2020.
Terms and conditions apply.
Chromium. We are better together.
Moro mbijando bakandro
ko ngalla janna kibaro moy kalka sola bagaso wafu
e ka fontelle ko sola enterprise fo fendi nabe dendi sola la fannala la sola la bundala ndella ko do ko ke mole janka sola joran kendo natale dum min nata na ko fanandiya birin gambia jam fo gambia e bantala nga bagasol samba be ton ka do ku kendo be ke mo be ni nga do ko ke momo ndi en ka sanji kilin garantie dilale nyin kama ko la do ko lanno so waran ni tema
bagasi falle
bagaso min bijay fofe nabe dendi sola la bundala la sola la fannala a bagaso sifa be bijay latini nan pumping system ndella fanan ko ke mole min be dendi na ko ni dandan ni kordal ka jiodi alla nin ka lampo fanan sika ka diala wo pompin wolbe den nin gadinol nin ku kotal ni la jiko ni la fanga bela lightning wolom dimbani ku kotal danno sola enterprise tin ko la kali
fama fam sola
fo fembe den ni sola la hajo la janne be loro
wato tenta bul baga solta
adum fana be ku fula la leje bunda fula fana be mbulle fanga kabona ndami anin dula ba fula safonya America ni Europe na fanga kabona wolta dum doronno moto min ka fenkendo na te sola la baga sol kana te nyambanko kanya
abanta baga solta
ngata
Farm Fresh li marché bu nga xamné la ñun ñepp ko yor képp ku am téléphone am internet rek mun nga fa jëndé ak www.farmfresh.gm mun nga fa tane jëndal lépp li nga bëgg ya xam nduga bi lu munti doon jën nen la légume la ganar la lépp lu munti doon Farm Fresh buñ la musa jaay dara lu lax lépp luñ la jaay rek lu fresh la moy doon té li yépp nak ci biir réew mi lañ koy liggéeyé li dara gënu ko neex mun nga jënd saa yu la neexé ak fo munti nekk ñu indi la ko ba sa buntu kër ci njëg bu gëna yomb képp ko bëgg jokkoo ak ñun 8906 592 wala 677 602